Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to the Soundcast, episode 2. Today we'll be talking about the live-action DC TV shows airing on CW. Basically, I wanted to discuss where the shows are at right now, my thoughts on them in general, and how things have changed this season in ways I was not expecting. I wanted to do this before the big invasion crossover, Heroes vs. Aliens, which is happening next week, so I really wanted to get this episode out. And I just finished watching Supergirl and The Flash for this week, so I'm completely caught up. And that is why this video will have full spoilers for every episode of Supergirl, The Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow up until this point. So everything pre-crossover is pretty much going to get touched upon here for the most part. Now, I do apologize if I do come out a little harsh and critical about some aspects of the series. Um, I'm not really upset at any of them. I love all four shows, just some more than others. And I am disappointed with some of the things that have happened recently, which is why it led to a discussion. As always, let me know what you think of this podcast in the comments below, and also subscribe here to Soundout 12 to keep up with more of these podcasts. I want to get them out every Friday, and hopefully I should be able to do that. So, talking about DC Comics is always going to be a passionate topic for me. Despite Power Rangers really being the first franchise I was ever following directly, as I grew up with that, and that was something that was a part of my life and has been a part of my life forever, to the point where my parents bought Power Rangers toys to put under a Christmas tree the Christmas before I was born. So Power Rangers is like engraved in my history and my past. But as I've grown as an adult, and as I've gone through life, I found that I relate to a lot more of the DC Comics characters, and I use a lot of them as idols and I not necessarily idols, but role models for how to live life. I try to be like Superman. I try to have the strength yet caring nature of Hawkman, the ability to have a brutish front but actually have a caring heart inside. Things like Blue Beetle, who is the most arrogant jerk. This is Ted Kord, of course. Can be the most arrogant jerk, but also be a legitimate hero that is out there to help people. And characters like Dr. Fate, who is handed great power, but makes sure to use it responsibly and not let the power overtake him. Aspects like that come from these DC heroes, and that not necessarily all of them are as relatable, but the ones that I cannot relate to, I look up to as role models. And I really like it when DC media reflects that. When DC Comics itself kind of strayed away from this and everything got really dark and really terribly written, comics-wise, in 2015, I completely dropped all the comics I was reading. I pretty much stuck to just Dr. Fate and Injustice. I dropped everything else, and I just started reading some Spider-Man for a while, because DC's direction of their comics was just in a place I didn't like it. And it really hurt, and it kind of left me with a kind of a gap in my life, as I had been so much ingrained with DC knowledge, and I was keeping up with stuff, and it was just like an aspect of my life, almost like watching Power Rangers every year. So DC Comics does mean a lot to me in that it has helped me kind of shape the person that I am today, in a great way, and it is probably my biggest passion of any franchise. It's the one I'm most passionate about. So when I see things done wrong with DC media, I get upset about it a lot more than I think most people would. Um, Things like Man of Steel, that movie just did not work for me. I understand why it works for others, and it just for me was not the kind of Superman I wanted to see portray on film. And the whole way Henry Cavill plays Superman is good. He's a good actor, and he portrays a good version of the character, I think. He's just stuck with really bad scripts in really dark settings that do not fit the character, in my opinion. I'm more traditionalist when it comes to DC characters, but I am not going to completely knock something down just because it is different than what I'm used to. I am willing to see change and adaptation. If you're taking a character from the comics and putting it to TV and film, it is naturally going to be different. It's not going to be exactly the same because it's a different medium. So I'm willing to go with change. I'm willing to see a darker Superman. I just want to see that the spirit of that character is continuing. A good example I can give is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was a very bright hero in the golden age and silver age of comics, and she was a symbol for feminism, a symbol for women, and also a good role model even for men, because she is powerful, she is strong, uh, she does not let evil rule. And even though she's Amazonian, she is a very human character. And that carried over to Batman v Superman. If I just looked at the costume design of the one image they released where she's wearing a more brown costume and looks really dark and gritty, I was not very happy with that look, but I was like, I'm going to give this a chance. And Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman has been fantastic so far, and I cannot wait for her movie next summer. That is my most hotly anticipated movie of 2017. So I'm really excited to see that, but I'm willing for change. The comics can change. They need to keep modern and relevant. If you keep using characters from the Silver Age and write them like they're in the Silver Age, you will continue to not be able to keep your audience. You got to update them, modernize them, keep them going, but the spirit of that character needs to remain. So when the DC live action TV shows change things, I don't get upset. I just want to see how it plays out. If it's well written, if it's well done, I'm not going to mind. I'm not going to mind that Mon-El comes out in Supergirl as Mon-El and not, I can't remember his Daxamite name, but Mon-El was a nickname he was given in the comics. They just went straight out, this is his name, Mon-El. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a change like that. It's not really anything major. It doesn't have that significance. But then again, Superman did not find him. Supergirl found him in this TV show. So it's a different type of scenario. It's a different alternate Earth. The best part about the DC multiverse is it's pretty much everything is technically canon because of the alternate Earths that exist out there. So, talking about the shows, when it came to this season, we're heading into Season 2 of Supergirl, Season 3 of Flash, Season 5 of Arrow, and Season 2 of Legends. Coming from last season, my favorite show was Supergirl. Second favorite was Flash, third was Legends, and fourth was Arrow. I did not enjoy Arrow last season, and about halfway through I actually stopped watching the show, and only recently, before Season 5 premiered, watched the rest of it. Even though there was some good episodes in there, like the Vixen episode was one of my favorites. But the thing is that the shows had Arrow just went really dramatic and was doing melodrama, more soap opera-y work. They just kept doing things over and over again. They killed off my favorite character of the show. I was really kind of mad at Arrow because they had just gone down this dark path. And it was a dark path that wasn't providing interesting storytelling. It was just, we're just going to keep writing this as we're going along. We're not really planning anything out kind of scenario. And it was, the only part that got me through that whole last part was Damien Dark, because he was a really fun villain to watch, but he was really, really evil. And killing off Laurel was probably the thing that tipped me over for not watching Arrow any further. And then I got back onto it. I started watching it again. I caught up. And then now things have changed. As of right now, if I'm going to be ranking the 4 live-action DC shows, I'm not counting the Vixen animated series, which is fantastic, by the way. If you've never checked out the Vixen animated series on CW Seed, definitely check it out. It's really short, so it's really quick to watch, but I really enjoy it. But my current ranking for the shows is currently number 1 is Legends of Tomorrow. Number 2 is Arrow. Number 3 is Supergirl. And number 4 is The Flash. And I want to just talk about why everything changed there. Legends of Tomorrow last season, despite having my favorite superhero of all time, Hawkman, in it for a couple episodes at the beginning and end, it had a lot of rough trouble with relying on Vandal Savage as its sole villain. They did some stuff here. They had the Jonah Hex episode, which was really fun. They had the Russian firestorms. Some really cool. They did some cool time travel stuff, but I always felt like they were stuck with, oh, we gotta defeat Vandal Savage. Oh, they just kept repeating the same character tropes. Hawkgirl kept saying, oh, I used to be a barista, or oh, we gotta find Carter, or oh, I'm in love with the Atom now, which was just super creepy to me because Hawkman and the Atom were best friends in the old comic timeline, and seeing Hawkgirl and the Atom kind of dating was weird, and I did not really set well with me. But no, it's just basically every character just did the same thing every single episode. Captain Cold and Heatwave would cause trouble, and then Sarah would join in, and then Hawkman and Hawkgirl thing, if Hawkman was alive at that point. It was just kind of a messy season, and it seemed to last forever. Even though it was only 16 episodes, it seemed to have lasted forever. And it finally ended, and I did think the way they killed Vandal Savage was really clever. Um, and then I was like, all right, what are you going to do with season 2? And then they had Rex Tyler Hourman show up, and I was like, whoa, okay, Justice Society. You have my attention because Justice Society is one of my favorite DC teams of all time, behind the Birds of Prey and the Legion of Superheroes. So I'm like really excited, and then had to wait all summer, and then we come up with Justice Society. And while the portrayal could have been a little bit better, I feel that what we got for Justice Society was pretty good. They did come off very stoic. They would talk down to the Legends, which is kind of understandable because the Legends is just a messy team, and that's probably where the most problems with the show come from, is just how messy they are as a team. They're not really well organized, and the Justice Society was very organized. Didn't have personal connections. It was really kind of cool to see that. It's kind of goes back to the Golden Age writing style with characters in the 40s especially. But I really enjoyed that episode of that, and I did enjoy seeing Obsidian when he was older, and then kind of a follow-up on the Justice Society. And I hope they do more with them because they're an interesting team, and I really hope that Legends explores that. If Legends gets beyond season 2, it only has 17 episodes scheduled for the season, and it's being moved to follow The Flash. It's not in its own time slot starting next year, which is kind of weird, but that's a discussion for another day. No, Legends it's really fun. Ray Palmer continues to be the smartest idiot in the world, which I think just kind of works to that character a whole lot. And I'm really glad. I think out of all the TV characters, I think that the Atom might be my favorite interpretation of a comic character into TV. He's just really fun. He gets the personality, Atom, the wit, and the humor. And he's played by Brandon Routh, and Brandon Routh is just good at playing that type of character. And the Atom is just my favorite character in Legends by far. I also like seeing Sarah be a leader, and her putting her aside her vendetta towards Damien Dark, which I'm glad that the show is addressing issues that they've come up with, like changing the timeline all the time. But it is kind of playing into things, as they had an episode where they saved Tatsu Yamashiro, or Katana, her ancestor. They saved her from dying because the Shogun killed all the wives that he got. So by killing the Shogun, she never died. Therefore, Tatsu could exist in Arrow years later. So it's that kind of thing where they're changing. They're technically, it looks like they're changing history, but it's not affecting anything we've already pre-established, which is pretty cool. But Legends has been really fun. Steel and Vixen have been great additions to the team. I'm kind of glad Rip Hunter's kind of gone. He was just not really that interesting. He had a backstory, but then, I don't know, he just wasn't very interesting to watch as a character. So I'm glad that they have replaced him with Vixen and Steel. They've also taken out Hawkman and Hawkgirl, which, while you think I'd be upset because big Hawkman fan, I didn't really like the way they had them in the show, and it may be because they kept harping on their backstory so much and not fleshing it out, but just kind of repeating it. The thing is, Hawkman and Hawkgirl have this such complicated history, and if you don't flesh it out or give it time to flourish, the characters do not come off as interesting. So I was just like, all right, they can be out of the show. I'm okay with that. And now we got Vixen, which is the grandmother of the Vixen that's in the present day. And then we also have Steel, who's the grandson of the Steel from the Justice Society. So it's kind of two lineage characters. It's pretty neat. But I like where Legends is going. I hope it continues beyond this season. I am a little concerned because it is moving to follow The Flash, and its ratings have been a little on the low end of things. And it is, I believe, the most expensive show to produce. But we'll see what happens. I definitely am enjoying it, and glad it leads right into the crossover. Let's talk Arrow. Arrow fixed itself for me this season. And it wasn't necessarily in the first 5 episodes, the Tobias Church arc of things. It was really when Prometheus started taking center stage as the main villain, and the team was already established. The first 5 episodes are a little shaky. It's kind of getting things back off to a more grittier start, more realistic, farther away from magic, which I did not feel like it meshed well with the Arrow style of storytelling. I'm really glad that they're back to the more street level crime. You've got a serial killer as the lead villain, not a guy with a mystic totem that has, non-specified powers even. So I'm really glad that it's kind of gotten to this point. Prometheus is super interesting. The twist of his identity is really weird. It's almost like I'm not sure if I trust the show that it's telling me the truth about who Prometheus really is. And now realizing that one of the members of the team is a traitor is also really interesting. So I'm really curious where Arrow's going. It's also become really fun. The dynamic of having like Green Arrow, Felicity, Spartan, Black Canary, and Speedy was fun last season, but they kept fighting with each other, and there's too much history between like Oliver and Felicity and Laurel, and it was just kind of weird. And Speedy was always having bloodlust trouble, so it was never really fun to watch them as a team because they're always having issues. But this team, they don't really work well together, which is just an interesting dynamic because they aren't pre-established characters. The problem, I think, with the past Team Arrow was that it was just everybody they already knew. They were just bringing in the fold, giving them a costume, throwing them out in the field. And now you've pretty much got Green Arrow and Spartan and then Felicity as Overwatch as your main core team, which was the original core team from Season 1. And now you've added in Wild Dog, Ragman, Artemis, and Mr. Terrific. And so far, like, Wild Dog is probably my favorite just because I like how he is calling Oliver on his crap. Like, when Oliver does something, says something else, being total hypocrite, Wild Dog will just be like, hey, that's not what you said, or you're doing this even though you said that. And it's really cool, and I like the mentor-student relationship he's got going on with Diggle right now. And that's a cool dynamic. Ragman is the most useful of all of them because he just has magic powers, and they don't need to be explained right now. It should probably lead to a storyline eventually. But he's the most useful of the team. He just blocks bullets with his rags. He just goes in. He throws guys against walls. He gets things done. Artemis, I don't know. She's just there. I'm not really that, like, I don't know. She's just not even that interesting. Until the fact it revealed that she's working with Prometheus. So, really curious where that's going. But, yeah, she wasn't really that interesting. And then Mr. Terrific, Curtis Holt, introduced last season. Most useless member of the team. Somehow, apparently his superpower is he can just cornrow his hair instantly. That's the least logical thing I think Arrow has ever done, is that they can be like, oh, there's a bank robbery. We got to get over there right now. And then suddenly Curtis goes from afro to cornrows in like 2 seconds. I don't even know. I don't think there will be an explanation. There might be an in-joke at some point, but yeah, not liking that. Mr. Terrific's really cool in the comics. I would like to see the T-Spheres that they showed last season. I don't know what happened to those. It might be locked up with Palmer Tech assets, but could he get those so he can be useful, so we can get to the point where Mr. Terrific is cool, which is his T-Sphere usage. That is what makes Mr. Terrific really terrific. But other than that, I have minor complaints here and there with Arrow, but the show's off to a good start. I'm just loving this season so much more now. And plus, the storyline with Russia, that's interesting. That's more interesting than what was going on the island last season. So, really excited to see where Arrow's going. Want to see more. Really enjoying it. Supergirl, you were my #1 show last season. You were the bright, uplifting show that always stayed light, even when there was drama. And now it's gotten onto the CW. It's moved from CBS to CW, and it's got more dramatic, which is okay. You got to raise the stakes. I'm just having issues with some of the plot lines going on, and it's just that I really like the show still, and I still enjoy watching. It's just I like Legends and Arrow more right now, and this could change later on. I'm liking where they're going with Mon-El. I think building him up as a hero is a good way to do this. And he's an interesting character. He brings a new dynamic. It's nice to see a male character be pining for Kara as opposed to Kara pining for a male character, which is really interesting dynamic. Alex coming out as a lesbian has been an interesting storyline. They did give time to build up, and it is become interesting. The first episode where she's trying to come out to Kara, it felt like the actress wasn't really comfortable with the role in that sense, because all of the dialogue just came off really awkward. But the following episode, it kind of cemented back together, and it's now feels like it's part of the character as opposed to being a thing they just kind of tacked on. So it's kind of it's working out. I think the most interesting plotline of the show by far is Martian Manhunter and Miss Martian. With Miss Martian being a white Martian, Martian Manhunter obviously does not like her because white Martians killed all the green Martians. on Mars, including his family. And now that she's given him a blood transfusion, he's got white Martian DNA in it. Really interesting stuff. I'm kind of sad they did not go with light, bubbly Magan from the comics and Young Justice, especially Young Justice, because I really like that version of Miss Martian. But at the same time, I was initially upset that they did not go with a lighter Miss Martian. But at the same time, this is a nice, kind of more tragic version. It's one that ran away from the white Martian species. She was a guard of prisoners, and she ran away. She didn't want to be like that anymore. And that has become an interesting plot line that I've really liked the way that's going. On the flip side, I think where Supergirl is failing a little bit is it is getting a little dark. And that maybe part of it is not necessarily the Guardian storyline, because that is my favorite part of the show right now. I've always liked the Guardian. He's a great DC hero. You can stick anybody in that costume. He's not iconic enough to where you have to have a specific character. Seeing James Olsen become Guardian has been really fun, and I'm loving the dynamic between him and Winn. The drama got a little heavy-handed when Winn's like yelling at him, and I'm like, Winn, you are the funny one. You are not supposed to be yelling. That is going against your role. That is not really in character for him to be so dramatic, but now it's kind of balanced out. So Supergirl may move up to the rankings a little bit if I wasn't enjoying Arrow so much, but Supergirl is still solid. It's still good. Cadmus is an interesting plotline, and I'm looking forward to seeing where things are going, especially now that Cyborg Superman is in the show, which was the thing I was expecting to see last season, and now it's finally happening. So congratulations, Supergirl. You're doing good, especially on a new network. And now we get to Flash. Flash is the part where I'm legitimately upset because Flash was the lighthearted show. It was the best balanced show, too. Supergirl would have dramatic situations and be really lighthearted at the same time, which was kind of fun, but it just kind of had this weird juxtaposition that I don't think worked out so well. But Flash was always good at keeping balance. It was like if you had a dark episode with like Zoom tearing apart the city, you'd have a lighter episode like the Christmas episode with the Trickster. Yeah, it'd be kind of like a nice little balance thing. The Flash Season 3 has been nothing but darkness. I have not had fun watching this show, I think, since Jesse Quick debuted. That's pretty much it. Like, the Mirror Master episode, I think, was probably the most fun episode of the season, but you had Flashpoint, which changed everything. And that is an interesting dramatic element to use. And the way it's rippled through the entire cast has been interesting in that it's changed literally everybody's lives. And it's all Barry's fault, too. He went for a selfish reason, messed up the timeline. They're hammering it in a little hard, I think. I think that Barry is getting a ton of the blame, which he should get, but it is kind of problematic in a sense. But basically, I think most of the changes I'm okay with for dramatic sense. Wally getting powers is good because I want Barry to not be alone out there. He had Firestorm for a while, but then Firestorm ran off to Legends, and now he needs his Kid Flash. I think having a sidekick character is important. It's worked well for Supergirl, having Martian Manhunter and Guardian, and now we have Kid Flash coming up for the Flash. Because I noticed that in the Mirror Master episode, with Jesse Quick being there, it really gave a dynamic lightness to the show because you had two heroes working together, not just one guy that's trying to do everything by himself, showing that he has superhero help, and also building up vibe at the same time has been great. The problem that I've been coming up with the show is actually with Caitlin and Cisco. Cisco was that light at the light in the darkness most of the time, and it's now switched to HR, which is weird. Harrison Wells is now the bright spot of comedy. But Cisco's always been a lighthearted character, and I understand that Barry's timeline messing should affect him because everybody's getting affected. I think killing his brother and making him sad and depressed inside is just really awful to watch because he's just torn apart by the fact that his brother's dead. Now he knows that Barry was the reason his brother's dead, and now he's like upset and mad and grumpy. And he's probably going to be like that for a few episodes because that's how this CW drama works. Nobody gets over anything in a reasonable amount of time, except for Caitlin. Okay, so let's talk about that because that's really my second biggest point of contention. My next last point here. Caitlin as Killer Frost, I think, has been an interesting plotline. They've been building up really well. She's trying not to be an evil monster, but her powers are making her evil. and in the episode Killer Frost, which I thought was fantastic in doing that, but also just so dark, and it just made me realize how dark The Flash has gotten this season. Um, and then it's just like, what was weird was they locked her up in Star Labs, they captured her, she gone evil, she was doing really evil stuff, and then suddenly one talk from Barry, and she's flipped back to good side, and now we can fix Wally, and etc., etc. And I'm just like, wow, that felt incredibly rushed. I really, like, I don't really, because I like the character Caitlin, I don't want her to see her suffer, I don't want her to be evil, but she should have been locked up for a couple episodes. Have some time to let this storyline run its course, but instead we are straight back, Caitlin's back on the team within an episode. It would have been kind of interesting to see her either on the run or locked up in Star Labs for a while. That could have been a different plot element, but obviously they decided to go with a different direction there, which I'm glad the team is together. I don't want that team to break up like Team Arrow did, because that was the worst part about Season 4 was Team Arrow broke up, which I felt like it was a decent dynamic team, but now the new Team Arrow's a little better. But basically the thing is, like, Flash seems to be rushing a lot of its plot in the early episodes. They haven't had any, like, single, here's not a plot-related episode, which is fine. Serialized storytelling is interesting, but we're going to have weekly villains pop up. Give them time to shine. Mirror Master and Top got plenty of time to shine. Dr. Alchemy, of course, has had plenty of time to shine. He's one of the main villains. Savitar is so cool. I mean, we've barely seen Savitar, but I gotta say, he's so cool. But no, like, the thing is that when it comes to Dr. Alchemy and Savitar, they're central villains. Mirror Master is a classic Flash rogue. You know who else is a classic Flash rogue? And I'm just going to put up warning, geek rant about to happen, so here we go. The Shade. The Shade is such a cool villain. The Shade is one of my favorite DC villains. He has the ability to control shadow and manipulate things. To go back to an episode of Justice League, he was wrapping Hawkgirl in shadows, dropping her to the ground. He was repelling Green Lantern's light. His shadows could outrun the Flash and stop him. He dresses in a suit with a top hat and a cane. The Shade is just so cool. He's existed for a long time. He hasn't really gotten too much of a spotlight. I was kind of hoping, with an episode called Shade and a villain called Shade, that the Shade would have a chance to shine in The Flash. But unfortunately, the episode just revolved around Wally West getting visions from Alchemy and all this other plot drama stuff going on. And the Shade was in there for 2 fight scenes, not even given a real name, not even given any backstory. He was just there as a distraction for the heroes to have something to fight while Alchemy was getting to Wally, and also a distraction from the audience so that they wouldn't think about, so that way they'd have some action for the episode. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to be doing this, if you're just going to have a villain that's there for a throwaway, use somebody that we don't care about. Use the Eraser. Or, I don't know, anybody. Like, there's a ton of Z-list villains you could have thrown in there. The Shade, though, the Shade is cool. The Shade is so cool. And the closest thing we got to the cool Shade was the guy happened to be wearing a suit when he wasn't the giant shadow monster. Which giant shadow monster is probably the most boring thing ever. Parasite got more build-up in Supergirl. Every other villain I think every villain of the week for Flash has gotten more build-up than the Shade. And the Shade should have gotten even more build-up. He could have been the new Captain Cold, like a secondary villain that doesn't appear as much. Much like how Vigilante and Arrow is a new dynamic force, which, that's a whole podcast. I didn't want to go on a Vigilante love fest, but the fact that they got Vigilante and Arrow as a third party to the whole conflict between Prometheus and Team Arrow, I think that's wonderful. But I'm running out of time here. The Shade should have been so much cooler. They should have given him the time he deserved, and I really would have liked to see the Shade been really cool, but The Flash did not deliver in that aspect. It focused on the plot of the show instead, which is fine. I just wish they would have thrown away another villain instead of the Shade. And in conclusion, I still love the DC shows. I cannot wait for the Invasion crossover. We'll see what my podcast next week will be about, but it might just be about the Invasion crossover. I took the week off of work, so I'm just going to be watching every episode live. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this. So, yeah, here's to DCTV running for a while. No, I did not mention Gotham. That does not count. The CW shows are really great DC shows. I'm really enjoying them, and I'm hoping that they continue in the good directions they are headed. and everything works out in the future. So until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.